Penny, I had a lot of fun with you today. Oh, she's such a sweet dog. Look at her giving me some kisses. So this is Penny's roadmap to success. Penny is a great little dog, and she really helps her guardian out quite a bit. But I think Penny was a little bit confused as to what her position was in the house. And because her guardian didn't have a lot of rules and structure, I think it confused Penny in thinking that they were peers. And but we also kind of didn't do probably the best job of communicating what Penny could do to make us happy, and Penny tried to figure it out on her own. Now, one of the first things we went over is the benefits of positive dog training and how you can use positive reinforcement to train your dog to do the things that you want. Do you want to get down? Is that what you're saying? Can you? Okay. Always listening to the dog. So, okay, for Penny, she likes to jump up on, literally and climb up on top of her guardian. Now, it's okay for her guardian to call her up under her lap and to cuddle with her when the guardian's asking for it. But right now, Penny was doing that on her own. And when a dog walks on top of you, that's a clear indication that it does not respect you as an authority figure. And so we're not going to dominate or punish the dog. We want to create a perception of authority through our actions and nurturing the dog and doing all the things that we need to do that are positive interactions that the dog actually associates as being leadership qualities. So if the dog nudges me and tells me what to do and I pet it, then I'm telling the dog, yes, you're in charge of me, because when you tell me what to do, I jump. Instead, what we're going to do when the dog nudges me or scratches at me or whatever it is, I'm going to give the dog a counter order. I'm going to tell it to sit. 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 And as soon as she sits, I'm petting her under her chin and I'm saying the word sit and only the word sit. The guardian, like myself and a lot of people, likes to say good sit. But dogs key on the first sound that they hear. So the best thing that we can do is just say the word sit or come or crash or whatever the command word is. Petting with a purpose is one of the easiest things the guardian can do. It's going to take a little bit of time to get in a habit of doing it. So if you catch yourself, the dog jumps up on you, you start petting it, and you recognize you do it, stop, tell her to sit, and then pet her under her chin and say the word sit. She's already sitting, ask her to come and sit over here. Eventually, when she knows different commands, we could ask her to lie down or to shake or do other things. I would probably not recommend teaching her to shake, but other commands would be also appropriate for you to give her to do in order to get affection from us. So that's petting with a purpose, which is one of the easiest things you can do. The absolute easiest way to train your dog is what I call passive training, which is simply recognizing and petting the dog every time it offers a desired action and behavior. If Penny were to walk over to me right now, I'd reach over and pet her and say, come. If every time she sits down next to me, I pet her and say, sit, she knows that sitting is something David likes, and she's going to continue offering the sit to get my attention. That's what will happen with petting with a purpose, is she'll come start sitting in front of her garden to prepay for attention. So for passive training, right now Penny only really knows sit, and so she doesn't have a lot of commands. Well, the guardian can very easily train her to lay down by every time she lays down, petting her, recognizing that she's doing it, and petting her and saying the word crash or lay, whatever you want. Make sure they're one-word commands. Come. That's a good example of passive training. She did it on her own. I didn't influence her, but I did reward her for the end result. Try to come up with fun command words and one-word command words only. Let me see. What else did we go over? We went over some rules. Some of the rules would be the dog. Now, the guardian spends a lot of time in the bedroom. And when she's in bed, the Penny should not be on the bed unless she gets an invitation to get on the bed. But she should not be on the bed when the guardian is eating. For dogs, eating is the most important activity. So if we eat before we feed our dog, that helps the dog see us in the leadership position. And while we're eating, the dog should not be within 7 feet of us. Another rule would be that dogs should not be in the kitchen. And I showed the guardian how to use my escalating consequences, specifically the third one, marching at the dog, in order to move the dog outside of the kitchen. Remember, when you're doing that exercise, don't turn around and walk back in the kitchen with your dogs, giving your back to your dog. Walk backwards. You do that for a week or two, and eventually you'll be able to do that and turn around, and the dog will be able to stay. Now, when you do that, make sure that you are practicing warm-up practices whenever possible. So if we're going to actually cook some food, when we're cooking, we're distracted. So when we go do that, when we go in the kitchen, we turn and we walk towards the dog and make it walk across the line, walk backwards, and then I think she actually went outside. Well, no, she wouldn't. We would have heard the dog door. I thought that I left a piece of sweet potato outside, and I thought she actually went out and got it. She will eventually be doing that. But going back to the video, what we want to do is we want to recreate situations, help the dog practice an easy scenario before we help them practice a more advanced scenario. So if we're practicing the kitchen thing, we maybe go in the kitchen, we walk the dog out, and we walk backwards, and we keep on doing that until the dog sits or lies down. Then now we warmed up. now where I'm going to actually do my cooking, because now the dog knows what it means to leave the kitchen and stay out of the kitchen. And the stay command, which is one of the videos that we have above, is something that the Guardian can do that will help the dog learn to do that, just that. Stay. Now, I don't necessarily tell her to stay. You can do it initially when you're asking her to stay out of the kitchen, but we just want her to stay out of the kitchen without giving her a stay command. For the stay, I'd like the Guardian to practice that several times throughout the day. Remember, we're first going to do for refrigeration, then we're going to do for distance, then we're going to do for distraction. I'm not going to go through it because there's a video above that outlines it. Let me see, what else do we go over? We went out for the dog door. Now, there's 2 videos above for the dog door. The first one is just trying to teach her to go in and out. And there's a lot of tips in there. I'm not going to recycle them here. But you might practice that conditioned emotional response, the other video where the dog was touching the phone case every time before we practice the door. Now, I'd like the Guardian to practice the conditioned emotional response touching the case. And eventually we're going to she got it really quick, so we should be able to hold that sucker right in front of the dog door. Now, I'd like the Guardian to do is get a stick or a bevel or something and tape it to the case so she can hold it off to the side without her hand being on it, because I think the dog started to target the hand. And so we're going to move that gradually closer and closer until it's right next to it. And then eventually, and we can actually say touch or nose or a command word that means touch it with the nose. And don't start saying that until you're holding the case in front of the dog door and she's touching it with her nose. Then we'll want to say, like the Spanish word for nose or whatever it was, come. And then eventually, after you practice that 5 or 6 times in a row, then do it 5 or 6 times and then take the thing away and just hold your finger right here at the dog door without the case. If she touches with her nose, give her what we call a jackpot. The first time she does it, give her like 5 treats. And then you would say nose or whatever the word is. Eventually, we're teaching her to touch her nose to the translucent surface, and eventually that's going to give her confidence. That activity, I think, is problematic for her in a couple of reasons. I think she doesn't like stepping. There's a couple steps, and I think the steps spook her a little bit. And like I said, I think that the Guardian mentioned the sounds are kind of something that sets her off, and it does make a sound. I think that also probably contributes to it. And then I'm guessing, like I said in the video, a lot of dogs get their heads quasi-caught for a second, and that makes them not want to go through it. So I think if the Guardian switches that to the bendable, one solid piece that's bendable for the flap, I think that will take care of that problem. And eventually she'll go in and out. But remember, when we do this, I'd like the Guardian, every time she does this, to go outside through the door and do not let the dog go through the human door. And then we'll spend a couple minutes. Maybe go outside and clean up the poop or whatever it is. And if the Guardian likes to sing, if she sings a little bit or talks loudly, the dog can hear that, and that makes the dog more engendered to want to come out with us. And then if the dog ever does that, make sure you have treats with you. So as soon as she comes through that dog door, we're going to pet her and we're going to say out or whatever the word is for going in and out of the door. Also, consequently, when we go inside the house, we're going to do the same thing. Close the door, and then we're going to go through it. Now, the last time we did that, we didn't film it, but I only opened the last flap a little bit, and she actually pushed her way through. So I don't think the Guardian is that far away from getting her to use the dog door. Let me see. For her door dashing, we did a couple things. We went over a technique of how to teach the dog to go to the dog bed on command. Now, when we do that, we want to practice that several times throughout the day without actually leaving or having somebody at the door. So it's independent of that. And again, come up with whatever the command word is. Every time the treat goes in her mouth, we're going to say the command word. Now, while we're doing that, we're also going to be simultaneously practicing the stay. Eventually, those 2 command practices are going to come together, and we're going to have the dog practice going to the door. Now, for the stay video, I included some instructions on how to incorporate walking towards the door and getting her to stay there by desensitizing her to the triggers that are associated with the door opening. The clicking of the deadbolt, the handle tweaking, the sound of the door creaking open, the sunlight coming through. So again, by breaking it down in individual steps and helping the dog practice that, the dog's going to be better equipped to stay in place. And that way, also the distance, she's about 10 feet away from the door. That distance makes everything coming in the door a little bit less intense. Now, in the meantime, while we're practicing this, before we've achieved this, if somebody has to come over and we're worried about it, what I would do is the same thing I did in the very first video that's on this, where we take the leash and tie it around one of the chairs or the leg of the couch and have the guest come in. Now, some of my clients will actually put down painter's tape to show where the person puts their foot to the side. And I'd like the guardian to arrange to have neighbors or friends or people who live in the area to come by and visit so they can practice that door exercise. Now, the door exercise is going to afford you a lot of opportunities to turn sideways and back. Remember, as soon as the dog is calm, we turn and we start engaging with it. As soon as it gets excited, we don't chastise it. We just turn to the side and we lose interest. Let me see. Make sure the guardian is eating before she feeds the dog. I'm trying to think, are there other things that I can think of that I think I've covered just about everything? Is there anything you can think of that I haven't covered? Okay, Penny. Oh, to put her in a sit, I like to hold my hand like this. You see that she's looking at my hand because it looks like I'm holding something. So whenever I put a dog into a sit, Penny, to get her to come, I start lowering it. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog, and then I raise it over her head in an arc. Penny. To put her in a sit. As soon as she sits, I pet her on the chin, say sit. And again, try to pet her as much as you can under the chin to facilitate that nose up. Her head, she likes to put her head down right away. Don't pet her when she's doing that. Or, I mean, if you pet her under her chin so you can kind of push her nose up. This is a kind of a situation where the more you do this, eventually she'll keep her nose up more and more. Now, also, she sometimes when she would, her guardian, when we went to the leash or at the couch, she would flip over on her belly. That is a submissive move. If we pet her, and she likes, her guardian said she likes having her tummy petted, which she probably does. However, if we pet a dog in that submissive state, we're going to make them feel like they need to be more submissive. This is why I talked about in one of the videos, only pet your dog when it's doing the right thing. And if you pet it when it's nervous, anxious, or fearful, you're going to make it more fearful. Submissive is certainly not something we want her to be. She doesn't need to be submissive. I don't want any dog to be submissive. I want it to be confident and calm. So as soon as she bends, so flips over, stop petting her. That's what I call the light switch on and off. Light switch on is turning the dog, giving the dog affection or attention. Turning it off is stopping that. So if I'm petting her and then she tries to jump up on me and I stop petting her, if my timing is precise, after a while she'll stop doing that. Now, the last thing is I want to go over the two easiest things that we covered in this session that will probably be the most powerful: petting with a purpose and passive training. If the guardian gets in a habit of doing those two things, every time you pet your dog, it's a micro dog obedience training session that you do without even thinking about it. Penny. Penny, come. Come. Oh, this little sweetheart is Penny, and this is Penny's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it. Right, Penny?